Welcome everybody to watch more movies. We are in the middle of our anime month, and today we continue on with an anime classic, My Neighbor Totoro. The movie was released in 1988. The version we will be talking about is the 2005 dub from Disney, the English dub. And Devin, this movie is the one that I really had in mind when I chose the theme for this month. I've owned this movie on Blu-ray for a number of years, and now I also have HBO Max where it's available for free. So I've always wanted to watch it, never got around to it. That's why I chose this theme. Had you heard anything about My Neighbor Totoro previous to watching it for this?
Again, my answer is going to be absolutely not. I really have probably only heard of a handful of anime films throughout my life, other than like obvious ones, like Dragon Ball Z that comes into theaters every once in a while or something. Um, but when you recommended this movie, I, you could say I had a completely different idea, like visually and everything of what this movie was going to be. And when I started this movie, I wasn't sure if I was watching the right movie.
I mean, that's basically it. I've owned it for a long time. My wife actually had seen the movie before and really liked it and had wanted to watch it, and I just never got around to it, so that is why I chose this one. Looking at it online, it's one of the most highly regarded anime films that I could find. On Rotten Tomatoes, certified fresh at 94%. Audience score also at 94%. Another fun fact about it, Empire Magazine in 2010 put out a list of the 100 best films. This is ranked number 41 on that list. Now, this was 2010, over a decade ago, but obviously this is a highly regarded film, and that's probably why it's been re-released so many times over the years. The critics' consensus on Rotten Tomatoes is My Neighbor Totoro is a heartwarming, sentimental masterpiece that captures the simple grace of childhood. So obviously high amounts of hype, high amounts of praise on this movie before going into watching it. I'd be lying if I said I didn't have high hopes going into it. Real quick, before we jump into how we felt, just a quick plot summary. If you haven't listened or watched Watch More Movies before, we're going to talk about the film spoiler-free. Then we'll give our rating on the film, whether or not we recommend it, and then we'll jump into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the film, you're still good to listen until we get to that spoiler section where we will alert you. But basically, the basic plot of My Neighbor Totoro is it takes place in 1950s Japan, and a university professor, Tatsuo, I'm just going to go with the first names. Tatsuo is the father. His two daughters, Setsuki and Mei, move into an old house to be closer to the hospital where their mother, Yasuko, is recovering from a long-term illness. And the house is inhabited by tiny creatures called Sasuwatari, I believe is how you pronounce it. And there are these little small dust-like creatures that live in the house, and they move around in dark spaces. And one day, one of the girls follows some of those creatures into a hollow tree, and inside of that tree is a very large creature, which she calls Totoro, and that's why it's called My Neighbor Totoro. So that's basically the plot of the film. It sounds very simple. The biggest thing I would say about this film, comparison-wise, is that it reminded me of an Japanese anime version of Alice in Wonderland, is the best way I could describe it, while still having a real-world plot element with the mother sickness playing into the film. She doesn't fall into this hollow tree and spend the rest of the film there. It's just an element of the film. But that's the way I felt about it. Devin, what was your initial impressions with the movie?
Yeah, really quick, I would say that visually it's definitely not as um, crazy or psychedelic as like an Alice in Wonderland, but definitely like the story of it, I guess you could say, would be. But my first impression of it was, first of all, I almost was getting like a paranormal feel with like the soot creatures or dust mites or whatever. So I was pretty interested in that. And then after a while, like you said, these movies tend to be a slow burn in the beginning. I was kind of interested in like where they were gonna take it, and you were just kind of, there was only like a handful of characters in this movie. So after I'd say like the 20-25 minute mark, you're pretty much introduced to everybody. And then, you know, she the one daughter, or whatever you want to call her, sister, um, goes into this hollow tree and finds this creature. And it took, for me at least, it felt like it took a while to get to that point. And I was invested pretty much the whole movie, because it was very serene and like shot well, I guess you could say, and written well. All the characters, just had their lines, but I felt like it took a while to get to that point, and I was kind of, I guess you could say, like I was a bit anxious about being disappointed that they weren't gonna, be able to do as much as I would want with these, creatures or characters, or whatever you want to call them, with Totoro and everything.
Yeah. And just, you said you were invested the whole time. For me, I did find it a little bit difficult because I was waiting for them to meet Totoro, and then once they did, it's not like Totoro became a major part in the film after that. They have the encounter. I think it's actually the younger sister, May, that meets Totoro, and then they just go back to the normal film, and you're wondering, okay, so when's that going to come into play? And it really doesn't for a while. It just goes back to the normal film of the family drama and the mother in the hospital, and then towards the end of the movie, Totoro comes back around. So it's not like it's a huge part. So in that middle part, I did find myself a little bit uninvested in the film. But it does come back around, and I won't get into spoilers just yet, obviously, but there's a certain event that happens towards the end of the film that then re-hooked me back in, and I really enjoyed the third act of the movie. It was probably my favorite part of the film, was how it wrapped up in the last third of the film.
Yeah, I would agree. The third act of the film was my favorite part as well, and I feel like I know what you're talking about. What scene kind of hooked you back in, and that did hook me in for the rest of the film. But I will say that I was a little disappointed, like, immediately after this scene that I'm talking about, and just overall in the fact of, I feel like Totoro and the other little Totoro creatures, I guess you could say, did not play a big role in this movie at all.
That's true, and I don't think that that's a spoiler to say. I mean, you want to, set people's expectations. This is not a movie about Totoro. It kind of relates to what I talked about the last week, where it's more of a slice of life. Here's this family, here's these two sisters, they're dealing with their mother's illness, they're dealing with, being kids in a new unfamiliar place, and it's really just a movie about childhood, but then also there's this random magical creature that lives in a hollow tree. So, the movie's not really about that. So go in with that expectation. I think if you do, you will enjoy this movie. If you like anime, this is definitely an anime film. It doesn't shy away from the anime tropes. Everything about it is a Japanese film, and I personally enjoyed that because that's what I was looking forward to this month, watching something that does not remind me of a Western American film, and this movie delivers on that. But if you're going into it expecting, any type of Western film, or expecting this cool movie about this creature, that's not what it is. It's much more of a human story than you would expect. I would say that didn't disappoint me as it might have to you, Devin, but overall, I did really enjoy the film. Would I have enjoyed more Totoro in the film? Probably. Maybe a little bit more of an explanation or an exploration of who he is, what are his powers, did he get them from. You're left wondering for most of the movie. Well, I'll save that comment for spoilers. But yeah, I would have loved more of him in the film, but it didn't really disappoint me that it wasn't there, that there was only a few scenes with him, because it makes it really special, those scenes that Totoro is in. And because I was hooked in and actually interested in the human element, the human story of the film as well. There's something that happens towards the end that got me really worried that the film was going to go away. I didn't want it to. Thankfully, it doesn't. We'll get to that in spoilers. But overall, I did really enjoy this one. Was there anything specifically negative outside of just being disappointed or whatever the case may be there, specifically negative that you had about the film?
Yeah, though about like probably like 20, 30 minutes in after the mother is introduced for like the first or second time, the rest of the movie I was really wondering why the hell she was in this hospital or whatever. And I was like, when are you going to explain it? Every time I went back to her, I was like, am I, does she have cancer? What's going on? And even though it might have only just hinted that she was in the hospital because she was sick, I was like, I can't really, uh, especially with the movie, somewhat focusing on that as like a big role in the movie. I couldn't get that invested because I didn't know what was going on with her. Um, and that I would say that was probably, if the only negative, just a pretty big negative in the movie for me. But one more thing I wanted to say was, I feel like this movie did a good job of kind of being this third, outside point of view, and you kind of get the from that you kind of get the point of view of the father Tatsuo, of like, my kids are, I have a job, my wife's in the hospital, my kids are having fun with an imaginary friend or whatever. And then you also get the sister's point of view, the older sister's point of view, Satsuki, and she's kind of dealing with both sides. She's like, I'm caring about what's going on with my parents a lot, and also I want to still be a kid and have fun with my little sister. And then May is just fully like, there's times where you can tell she cares about her mom, but pretty much fully she's just invested in this imaginary world. And so I thought it did a really good job of getting all those points of views.
Yeah, I took it, for me, mostly from the perspective of the children. The perspective of the father is definitely there, and as adults, we can recognize his perspective. For me, though, I was looking straight through the lens of Mei and Satsuki, and I think that's why the plot point with the mother wasn't a negative for me. Because a lot of times, as a kid, you don't know the full story of what's going on. You don't know why your parents are maybe fighting, or why a family member is sick. A lot of times they're not going to sit you down when they're not even 100% sure what's going on themselves, aren't going to sit you down as adults and give you the full reality of what's happening because, they're kids. Like, we don't need to worry them, more than they already are. So the bad side of that is that a lot of time as a kid, you come off confused or you don't really know what's happening, and that shows through in the film where the kids are upset that the mom's not coming home. They really don't understand. Like, they know she's in the hospital and know that she's sick, but they don't know to what extent, and they're like, why isn't she coming home? And that really hit emotionally for me because I was seeing the film through the perspective of those kids and understood why they would be confused, or they don't have the adult brain to maturely handle the situation like the father does.
Yeah, so just the last thing I'll say, is narratively, I think this movie did an excellent job. Um, you know, Theatrically wise, or even like, visually, I feel like it was, it did what it needed to do. It did enough. Um, and I think it set the tone less than halfway through the movie that this, wasn't gonna be like an Alice in Wonderland like extravaganza. Like, this was had a story to tell, and had some cool characters in it, but uh, that was pretty much it.
Yeah, so what would you rate the film?
I would give this film a 5 out of 10. Uh, I I enjoyed it. Would I ever watch it again? No. Um, there's this. I don't really have any praise for the movie. I wouldn't recommend it to like any. I would say like anyone I know, but I would recommend it to to my friends who have children. I'd be like, this is a really great movie to show children, I feel. And and if you're watching it with them, like you may enjoy it, you may not, whatever it is. But I feel like, I don't know, like an age range of like what would best fit. But I think this is like, any kid would have a lot of fun with this movie.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. unless they might get a little bored at some points, but depending on the age of the kid. But definitely can't disagree with you there. We haven't really talked about the technical aspect of this film yet, so I do just want to briefly say I thought the animation was good. Unlike Your Name or Children of the Sea, there wasn't that spectacle element, kind of what you alluded to at the beginning. It's not extremely well animated because it was made in the 80s, and it's not this visual spectacle. It's a cartoon, but I thought it was animated well.
I was gonna ask if you knew if it was like revised at all in 2005, like HD or anything.
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
It's definitely remastered. I mean, depending on how you're watching it, I watched it on HBO Max on my 4K TV, so I don't know how well the HBO Max 4K is, but yeah, it looks better now than, if you're watching on Blu-ray or on streaming than it would have looked in 1988. That's for sure. But they didn't go in and remake the movie. It's the original movie, but it's just a remaster of it. So it looks nice. It looks good, but it's an 80s cartoon at the end of the day. Like they could remaster Snow White. It's going to look really nice, but it's still an old ass cartoon. So that's what I'll have to say about that. I do think we're going to have a pretty big difference though when it comes to the actual rating of the film. If I made a list of 100 best films, would this be number 41 on my list? No. It's not a 10 out of 10 film for me or anything along those lines. However, I really enjoyed it. And when I think about anything that would take away points from the movie, I can't think of a single thing. It was really enjoyable. I connected emotionally with the characters. Totoro was a cool little addition point in the film that gives it that fun, fantastical element. Would I have liked more of him? Yes, but I wouldn't really take away from the film because of that. The film's less than 90 minutes long. It's not, these other anime films we've been watching are over 2 hours a lot of the time. So this, it's only 90 minutes long. I'm not going to take away points for that. What you said about the recommendation, am I going to recommend this to anybody? No. But what I would say is if someone says, I'm looking to watch an anime film, a family anime film, or I'm looking to watch any kind of anime film, this is going to be the top of my list of what I recommend. If it's an adult looking to just watch something that they would narratively enjoy, I would probably recommend Your Name before I recommend this one. But I'm actually going to give this one a higher score. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, I already own it on Blu-ray. I talked about that. I would find myself watching this again. I could definitely see myself turning this on in the background or turning it on just for if I want to have just a calm night. What's a nice movie I want to watch? I could see myself watching this again. And definitely, if I ever have kids, would be a film that I would show them. So, strong 8 out of 10 for me on My Neighbor Totoro. So at this point,
I will say.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I will say that the theme song for this movie has been stuck in my head for about 3 days.
yeah. The score of the soundtrack is very good as well. And the whole opening credits, this credit sequence, I really enjoyed too. So we are going to jump into spoilers at this point. If you haven't seen My Neighbor Totoro and you don't want to be spoiled, go check that out either on HBO Max or rent it. I'm sure you can rent it, anywhere you rent movies. I definitely recommend it. Doesn't sound like Devin recommends it as much unless it's more of a family setting, looking for a film for your kids. Would that be accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would just say if you're looking to watch any kind of enjoyable, quick 90-minute anime film, this would be one of the ones I would recommend. But we're going to jump into spoilers here, so go watch the film if you want to, or if you don't care, you can keep listening. This is going to be kind of similar to Children of the Sea. There's not a lot of plot points I want to hit in the spoilers, but there are a few. So I'll start off. I stopped myself from making a comment earlier, but so now I have to try to dig in the recesses of my brain of what I was going to say to bring that back up. But with Totoro in the film, this is what I was going to say. So for the first half of this movie, you could think to yourself, maybe Totoro doesn't exist. Like, maybe it really is an imaginary part of Mei's mind, and even when the other sister, Satsuki, meets it, maybe it's also, they're both imagining it. But at the end of the film, it's pretty clear when Mei gets lost and no one can find her, and Satsuki goes and recruits Totoro, as well as the cat that's a school bus, another character I really enjoyed in the movie. They basically take her right to her sister. Like, it's pretty clear that these are actual creatures that exist, and then they drop them off in the tree to watch over their mother there at the end of the film, leaving the ear of corn for the mother. So it's pretty clear they're real creatures. Also, what I was alluding to earlier, talking about the way I didn't want the film to go, is when May first disappeared, and then they found the shoe in the pond, and they were kind of alluding that she could have died. If that would have happened, it definitely wouldn't be, this happy-go-lucky childhood film. It would have really taken a turn. I'm glad it didn't go that way. I wouldn't go as far as to say it would ruin the film, but I'm glad it did not go that way for sure, and they do end up finding her.
Yeah, that definitely would have been a completely dark turn for this movie.
Yeah.
Just thinking that that's how it ended. No, but one thing I do want to say is I can appreciate them focusing on the story more than having a crazy adventure film with Totoro and either of the sisters. But I will say that I was a little disappointed in not having as much Totoro as I wanted. Especially, I feel like the most that I felt that is when they were planting the trees or whatever they were planting there, and then Totoro came out and they did the little dance and all the plants grew together and made this huge tree. And they were flying around like Mary Poppins. And I was like, all right, this is gonna take off. They're gonna they're gonna have a bunch of fun. They're gonna do a bunch of crazy stuff. And then that scene ended. They woke up. The tree wasn't there, and it was just just back to a regular movie. And you didn't see Totoro for a little while. I think until they were waiting for her dad after that at the bus stop. And then you first see the cat school bus.
Yeah.
But I do, and that's the other thing is I can remember each time I saw Totoro in the movie, and I really enjoyed each time. But part of me still feels like I would have liked to see, especially even if it was right in the middle, right when I said that point when they were making the tree, even if they spent 15 minutes just going on some little adventure with Totoro, and then it went back to the movie, I feel like I just missed out a little bit on it.
Yeah, that's what you were looking to see. That's totally understandable. One of my favorite scenes is when May first falls down and falls onto Totoro and meets him, and they have that back and forth where there's a small child laying on this giant monstrous creature, and he ends up being just extremely kind-hearted and almost dangerously clumsy, right? When I think there's a point where he breathes heavy into her face or something, and she's flying away. He doesn't even know how to interact with this small child. Very cute scene. I really enjoyed that. The cat that's a bus is hilarious. There's just no explanation. And also at the end, like you were saying, when they were flying around, it's just so ridiculous, but it's funny. That's what I was talking about with it being definitely a Japanese anime film. It does not hold back. It's hilarious. Really enjoyed that. Going back to the mother, I defended that more than you did. I will say that it is kind of cheap at the end when they're just kind of oh, she's fine. She just has a cold. That's why she's at the hospital. Okay, I understand you kind of want to have more of a happy ending, but it's they didn't really make it seem like a big deal. I'll agree with you on that. And there really was no payoff. She doesn't even come home at the end of the film. There's really no payoff to that. But I'll let my explanation earlier stand on what I said regarding that.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if it was if she had some other sort of illness and then she got more sick and that's why they sent it and they were oh, it's just a cold, but she still has to be in the hospital, or if the whole reason she was in the hospital they found out was a cold, which is why did it take you this long to find out that she had a common cold? And I guess that's another reason why with those just subtle explanations why I would more so recommend this to children who aren't going to really even if they did have an explanation or not, they're not going to really care about it as much as they are from the kid's perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's just another reason why I said I feel like it grabs a bunch of different perspectives, because as adults watching this movie, you you are wondering what's going on with the mother, like the dad might be. And then there are also parts in the movie where you're just having fun with Totoro, or you're in the older sister's position who's just like, trying to find her sister or whatever, or just worrying about general stuff of what's going on. Um, but that's why I feel like it grabbed those points of view really well. I did like the animation style. This was very like I guess you'd say like old fashioned, like when I was like at the very beginning when they're like driving into town to their new house. It just looked to me like old Dragon Ball Z, or just like cartoony anime basically. And I like that style of anime as well. I can't we this is our third movie that we've watched, and I feel like they're all different animation styles. I can't choose my favorite right now, but maybe when we rank them, I'll be able to.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, well, that's going to do it this week for My Neighbor Totoro. Next week, we end the anime month with a highly regarded, more modern anime film. Devin, you want to tell them about that one?
Yeah, this one is called A Silent Voice. My friend actually, he watches a lot of anime, and he recommended this to me. Um, Told me the basic story, plot of it or whatever. The film premiered in Japan September 17th, 2016, and it's it's I'd say it's quite a long movie, but
well, we'll get into it next week.
Okay.
Where did you watch this film? Is it on Netflix? I believe I watched it on Netflix.
I watched it on Netflix.
Netflix,
as well, yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember if it was Netflix or Hulu. All right, yeah, the film's available on Netflix. Go watch it before next week, so you can listen to the whole episode, spoilers included. And yeah, I think that's about it. Anything else?
Nope. Make sure you tune in next week, because we're gonna rank all four of the anime films and let you know what we're doing next month.
Absolutely, yes. The ranking for the month as well. Good point. All right, well, you can follow Devin at Twitter at Davon. What is it?
Dave on Smile.
Dave on Smile. You can follow me on TikTok at Josh Movie Guy. And we hope we've inspired you to watch more movies.